So Jennifer, I think we want to start with just letting moms know some of what we went through. And so for you, it's actually going to be first person, what you went through.
Yes.
And
yes.
for me, it's going to be, and one of my daughters didn't have dyslexia, but she still had something that caused her to just not fit into the school. So, like for me, it started in kindergarten, and when she started kindergarten, in I have three girls, so like I had been through the school process
Right.
before. But when she started kindergarten, the teacher was awful to her to be such a young 5-year-old kid, and it I don't know how many tears I cried. And in fact, we pulled her out of kindergarten and put her in a different school.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget in second grade, they were just sure she was never going to amount to anything. And they were pretty much telling her that, and definitely telling me that.
In second grade.
Yeah, in second grade. And when she graduated high school, I let that teacher know very publicly that that child that she said had no chance had just graduated high school and had been accepted into college. Because you can't make that kind of judgment on a small child. No. And you shouldn't. Like, everybody knows I can be a little high strung.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Yeah. So what about you from your perspective?
So it was really when I hit high school when things got really, really hard for me being dyslexic. And so up until that point, I had been in special ed, and my parents had helped manage my educational journey, I'll say. And then I got to high school, and of course I'm a teenager and those kind of things. And so I had a counselor tell me at a public high school that I was going to flip hamburgers for the rest of my life. And so my parents pulled me out and put me in a private school for children who had learning disabilities. And that was a game changer for me. And it just opened up for me to be able to go to college and beyond and do all these things. It was because I had a great foundation through the end of my high school career that allowed those things to happen for me. But if my parents had not pulled me out, I don't know where I would have ended up.
Yeah. So there's two sides of that I hear. First of all, probably your parents had the money to put you in private school.
Yes.
And
fortunately, yes.
Fortunately.
Yes.
And in our case, like, I probably had to learn to work more in the public schools because that was we just didn't have the money, so it wasn't an option for us. But I think either way, if you have the money, that's a great option.
Right.
But if you don't, just advocating.
And I think now there's so many resources available to parents that they just, instead of always just relying on the teacher to tell you, yes, this is right, this is good for your child, and this is bad for your child, you can actually spend the time and the research to find solutions that are free.
Right.
You know, you can use Google and start to type in symptoms and things you're noticing with your child, like when they're not able to tie their shoe or they're reversing their letters, and there's doing things like that. You can start to find resources to go in to talk to your teachers, your child's teacher, public school teacher, and saying, these are the things that I'm seeing. Are you seeing these things as well? What are the options? What can we do? And there's so many more things available. Of course, you know, I graduated from high school in 1990. So that was a long time ago. So things are a lot different. And I think the internet is such a great way for parents to find resources to help their child at home, to help them with the teacher and navigate and ask good, solid questions and understand that not every child learns the same way, and how can I best help my child learn?
Yeah, because I will say, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because we know you're the expert on this, but just from my experience, a lot of these kids who have disabilities come out to be a little bit more difficult to deal with. And I think it's because they're trying so hard.
Yes. I always think about if you had to get up and go to your job every day and you felt like you were not successful every single day, how long would you do that job?
Yeah.
Not long. And so a child...
Or how long would you do it before you
started
didn't
acting?
care?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Or started to act out. Kids have to feel like they're winning. Especially when they're little and they're getting their educational legs, right? And they're starting to learn how to learn. I mean, that in itself is its own art, learning how to learn. And so as they're doing that, they need to feel successful. And if they always feel like they're swimming upstream and things are always hard, they just start to give up, just as I would, or anybody else. If you had a job every day and you hated it and you weren't successful at it, how long before you felt like, I can't do this anymore, I don't care anymore. And so they start acting out, they start having problems in the classroom typically. And so then you're dealing with behaviors and a learning difference. And so those two things together can sometimes just have a kid just slide way back.
So I just noticed you said learning difference.
That is one of my pet peeves.
And I said learning disability. And that is so true.
It's just a learning difference.
Yeah, because you told me something when we were first talking about doing this about how we're not hardwired by nature.
That's correct.
So tell us, you'll say it better than me.
Okay, I'll try. So reading is a technology.
Okay.
So and people take it for granted. They said, well, you should just know how to read, or you should, this is how everybody learns to read, this one basic way. And instead of seeing it as a technology, it's something that was developed for us to communicate. And so although it's not technology like a computer, it's what we've used for a very centuries, I guess, is some way to communicate. And so our brain is not designed to process language. And so the part of your brain that processes language could be structured differently. And so if it is, you have a learning difference. So dyslexia, dysgraphia, those kinds of things, where either your handwriting, you can't communicate and get things down on paper, or you can't read the words correctly on the page. They don't have the correct sound attached to them and things like that. And that is the way your brain is wired.
Right.
Because the part of your brain that we use for reading and writing is actually the part of the brain that is designed to recognize danger and recognize like a footprint and say that that's that type of animal, or this is this type of berry. It's an automatic recognition. And that's how we read and write, off an automatic recognition. And if that misfires and is not firing correctly, when you try to read or write, it becomes very difficult. And it's just the way your brain's wired.
Yeah.
You have zero control over it.
Okay, so you have to promise, if you hear me say learning disability, you call me out on it. Because I think sometimes it matters to the people who hear you say it. But sometimes from our perspective, it's just how we grew up saying it. So you've got to call me out and be like, no, it's just a learning difference.
Yes.
And because I like that word more. Because it's true.
It is. It's not a disability. It's just a difference. And so taught correctly, with what tools work best for your brain, you can have all the technology. You can have all the reading and writing that you want. You just have to be taught differently.
So if you find this video helpful, I would love for you to give us a thumbs up, because we want to know if this kind of conversation is helpful.